Well, good afternoon. Welcome to the training. I'm Vicki Suter. I'm the Director of Rights and Advocacy at OCHN, also a member of the state and local supported decision-making work group. We are so excited that we're able to, for our second year, bring you information about supported decision-making and the tools that help support supported decision. So today's session, we will have three speakers that will be joining us. Mary, Amy, and Tracy, and as they present, they'll introduce themselves and give you a little bit of background about themselves. But certainly we're excited to have the partnerships of Detroit Wayne Integrated Health Network to help us get the word out about the trainings, and certainly the Development Disabilities Council and Mary in particular, who really, really make this happen for us. And we're just so excited to have that partnership and being able to share this with this information with individuals. Next slide.
So just a bit of housekeeping before we get started. Today's training has been approved for one social work CEU. In order to receive that CEU, you must be on the training for its entirety. You cannot join or leave more than 5 minutes early, or you forfeit your CEs. That is a national rule that we will follow. I will send out a survey at the end of the training. So if you're looking for CEUs or an attendance certificate in general, you will need to complete that survey, excuse me. And I will send that out in the chat at the end of the training. So if you're looking at the top of your team screen, it's a little bubble with 2 lines through it. That's how you pop out the chat. You can also use the raise your hand feature. So that's the little smiley face with the hand next to it. You can raise your hand there or use reactions if you wish. You can also put your questions in the chat. I will be monitoring that throughout the training. Just a heads up, this training is being recorded today and will be available on our website at a later date. That wraps up my housekeeping for today.
Thanks, Caitlin. Welcome to our training. I've already done this piece. Just thanks again for joining us. We've decided that this year these trainings would be 1 hour long, and we'll be providing a little bit more in depth on the topics that we're going to be covering over the next 9 months. Next slide. All right, so today's presentation is going to be about the life course tools and some tools that will help people be able to supported decision making. So I'm going to turn it over. I believe Tracy is going to start us off.
Yes, all right. Thank you so much, Vicki and Caitlin. Welcome, everyone. My name is Tracy Vincent, and I work for the Michigan Developmental Disabilities Council. I am the resource analyst there, and I coordinate the council's peer mentor program, and I am also a Charting the Life course ambassador. With me today, I have Amy. I'm going to let Amy go ahead and introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Amy Kukovitz. I'm a certified peer mentor as well as a rights advocate, rights educator, and rights advocate for OCHN. Thank you.
And Mary?
You're muted, Mary.
You're on mute, Mary.
Sorry about that. I'm Mary Shambogard. I'm the Community Inclusion Coordinator for the Michigan Developmental Disabilities Council and a Life Course Ambassador, and I'm the lead staff on the Council Supported Decision Making Initiative.
All right, thank you. Next slide. All right, so the outcomes for today, we are going to give you a basic overview of Charting the Life Course framework, and I will also be highlighting the key principles of the framework. You're going to be learning about how to use the Life Course tools and how they can support supported decision making. And then we are going to show you some real life examples on how to use the tools to support the life that you want. Next slide. So what is Charting the Life Course? Charting the Life Course is based on what we know about person-centered planning. It was designed to empower individuals with disabilities to live the life that they choose and to have the supports needed to carry out their good life. So it was created to help individuals and families of all abilities in all ages develop a vision for a good life, to think about what they need to know and do, to identify how to find or develop supports, and discover what it takes to live the life that they want. Next slide. So now I'm going to highlight very briefly, because we don't have a lot of time, I'm going to highlight the guiding principles of charting the life course. So next slide. So the core belief of charting the life course is that all people and their families have the right to live, love, work, play, and pursue their aspirations in the community. And you'll notice here that we don't say all people with disabilities, but we say all people. People with disabilities, they're part of the all, so we don't need to single them out or have them be different or special. This is not a separate framework for people with disabilities. And the goal here is that the individual will achieve self-determination, interdependence, productivity, integration, and inclusion in all facets of community life. Next slide. So charting the life course focuses on the all. It looks at and supports both individuals within the service system and individuals who don't receive formal services. And so we're really looking at the broader community and culture so that all people are impacted by the good work, not just those that are receiving services. Next slide. And so one of the key principles of charting the life course is that all individuals exist within the context of family. And so we know that there are all types of family membership. There's traditional families where the person lives with their parents and siblings. And then there's non-traditional where maybe the grandparents are raising grandkids or children are living with their aunts and uncles. But the important thing to remember is that for the individual, it is who they defined as their family. It could also be their friends or even a caseworker or maybe a peer mentor. So this is all about supporting the person to reach their goals, but it also recognizes that families also needed the support in helping that individual meet their goals. So keep in mind that family is defined by the individual and that individuals and their family may need supports that adjust as roles and needs of all members change, and that it's not dependent upon where the person lives. And so I really like this here in the little green box, that family is anyone who loves you unconditionally. Next slide. So trajectory and life experiences. So there is the notion that our life experiences will put us on a trajectory that we want to be on. The trajectory is the path that we want to head to. That is our main goal. And so it's those experiences in our life that we've had or that we will have that'll put us on the path that we want. You know, we want to have those life experiences that are going to move us in a positive direction. So it's those things, those steps that really need to happen so that we can get there. So let's go to the next slide, and I'll talk a little bit more about the trajectory here. So as you'll see, the upward arrow is the path that we want to be on. This is what it's going to lead us to our good life. So in that upper bubble, you'll see here that a good life for someone, it may be friends or family, having freedom, having choice. It's whatever that good life means to you. And then you'll also see the downward arrow, and this will take us to things that we don't necessarily want in our lives, but it's really important to recognize both so that the support that you are receiving is going to lead you to the things that you do want, making sure that you have those experiences to put you on that path to what you want in your life. And so we always want to make sure that we are aiming for our good life, which means having those experiences and also having the people in our lives to support us, to help us get there. And so once we know where we want to head, then we can figure out how to help that person plan and problem solve and help support them to get them to their good life. Okay, all right, next slide, please. So the holistic focus across all life domains. So we all lead a life made up of specific, connected, and integrated life domains that are important to a good quality of life. These domains are the different aspects and experiences of life that we all consider as we age and grow. Next slide. So Charting the Life course has identified life domains, and these include daily life and employment. So this encompasses, school, education, maybe some volunteering and gaining those life skills. Community living, which is housing and living options. We have social and spirituality, which is friends and relationships and maybe your faith community. Healthy living, those are things that will help you with medical, behavioral, wellness. We have safety and security. And then we also have citizenship and advocacy. And that's making choices and being a responsible citizen and leadership. And so in the disability field, oftentimes the service system tends to focus on the health and safety of the person, but leaves out those important discussions around, friendship and transportation and what they want to do during the day. And so Charting the Life course has identified areas to move beyond health and safety, but they also address it because it's also very important. And so the takeaway here is that these life domains are all interrelated and connected. And so what happens in one area of our life is going to affect another part of our life. So for an example, if I found a new job and I may have to move, that will affect my family and my housing situation. Our lives are very complex and multifaceted, and so it's really important to recognize the interconnectedness of everyday life so that we can work to make our whole lives complete and fulfilling as possible. Next slide. So another key principle has to do with individualized supports and services. We know that supports and services are very individualized. It's going to look very different for each person. And it's recognized that there are supports and services that we all need. And next slide, please. So the supports and services that we need are through these 3 buckets of support. The first bucket is discovery and navigation. And, sometimes we may not need anything but information about a topic so that we can make informed decisions. The next bucket is connecting and networking. And this is simply talking to somebody who's been in our shoes. We learn that, individuals benefit from talking to others who've been in their shoes and can relate to what might be what they're going through at that time. So this might be support groups, peer mentors, maybe SIB shops, self-advocacy organizations. And then finally, we have the goods and services. And those are things that we connect with to make our daily lives possible. And so we really want to make sure that we are filling all of our buckets, that we're not just dropping everything into, let's say, the goods and services bucket, because we also need connections and networking, and we also need information. So these are the 3 buckets of support that we all need. Next slide. So we get to my personal favorite principle and tool, and this is the integrated support star. So individuals and families, all of us can access an array of integrated supports to achieve our vision for a good life. Next slide. And that is through the integrated support star. So there are categories on each 5 points of the star. So first we have, we're going to talk about relationships. And so those are friends, families, acquaintances, those are the people that can support you to help you reach your goal. And then we also look at our own personal strengths and assets. We all have skills and abilities and strengths that we bring to the table. Technology, as we all know, there's lots of different types of technology available to us. And so we definitely want to look at technology to help support us. Community resources, these are the places, groups, resources in the community that anybody can access. And then lastly, we look at eligibility specific supports. And so these are, can be disability specific or needs-based specific supports. And so the idea here is to put your goal in the middle of the star and then go through each of these categories and identify all of the supports and resources that you need to help you reach that particular goal. And again, this ensures that you're not putting your eggs, so to speak, all into one basket, that you're utilizing all possible supports and services that are available to you. So the star can be used a lot of different ways. We can use it for mapping, to see what is needed to problem solve, for planning for long-term services and supports, used to meet a particular goal. Lots of different ways this integrated star can be used. And as we're going to see a little bit later in the presentation, we're going to see how Amy utilized the integrated support star in her life.
Thank you.
Okay, next slide. Okay, and Caitlin, I apologize because you're going to have to kind of click through these, but I want to just reiterate very quickly. In a nutshell, this is charting the life course. So you have the individual within the context of their family and community. You have the you have the different life domains that are all interrelated and connected. You have the 3 buckets of support. You have the integrated support star, the trajectory towards your vision for a good life, and then all of the different stages which build upon one another. So it's really important to help people have positive, healthy experiences, adequate support, and ample opportunities to learn and to make mistakes so that they have better outcomes in life. Right, so thank you. I know that was a very quick overview, but now I'm going to turn it over to Mary.
So you might be wondering why we're doing all this life course information, and how does that pertain to the topic of supported decision making? Life course is specifically designed to help people who are processing how they're going to make decisions and what supports they're going to need to make those decisions. So we're going to share some information. Amy's been kind enough to be willing to share from some of the forms that she's used with her circle. And I'm going to fill in with some information from other people that I know that have used the circle, including a family member. So all people have a need to make decisions every day of their lives. What to wear, what to eat, who to spend time with. That's no different for people with disabilities. That's why Life Course focuses on the all. We don't think about people with disabilities, we think about people. Some may have disabilities. What is different, though, for people with disabilities is that as youngsters, many are living in situations where their family or society stopped teaching decision-making skills at an early age. Many had different expectations placed on them that they would never make decisions for their own on their own as adults. So the teaching stopped, so also the learning then stopped. Learning how to weigh options, make a choice, and live with the consequences of choices made is a critical part of growing up. For many people with disabilities, this is critical teaching that was left out. Then as adults, they make decisions we don't like or that we worry about, and we wonder why. Life Course can be used not just to help plan future trajectories, but also to think of life as an adult and determine supports needed to maximize an adult's inclusion within the communities they choose. We're going to look at how these tools can maximize community inclusion and help people with disabilities retain their rights to make decisions in the process. Here's one comment from a group in Australia. Decision making is a human right. The United Nations Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities, adopted in 2006, played an instrumental role in affirming the rights of individuals to make decisions with the necessary supports to do so. The CRPD and Article 12 principles serve as kind of a starting point for materials on decision supports around the world, including a core set of values contained in a policy development guideline for aged care in Australia. And I really like that kind of statement because it really being able to make decisions about your own life and have autonomy in that process of deciding what you want and figuring out the trajectory is really critical. It's really a human rights issue. Next slide. So how does this fit with the Council's values on decision making? The Council is part of the group that Vicki mentioned earlier, Supported Decision Making Coalition at the state level. It's made up of organizations around the state that are working to advance the use of supported decision making around Michigan. In doing so, this work group provides educational opportunities such as the information you're hearing today. In addition to the education work group efforts, they sponsor public policy work group that is focused on legislative education and advocacy. We're also working on a toolkit, and that is being put together and to provide additional tools to people and their families to use when thinking about these issues. So there are a couple documents that are available on DD Council's website. We have our supported decision-making position statement, our supported decision-making brochure, and a short supported decision-making video. All of those are parts of the trainings that we did last year in the series that are located on the website. Caitlin, I'm sure will tell you more about that at the end. So really, when we're thinking about it, Life Course really fits with our core values about decision making. As you see on the slide, all adults have an equal right to make decisions that affect their lives and to have those decisions respected. Persons who require support in decision making must be provided with access to those supports, whatever supports are necessary. The choices and rights of persons may require decision making support, but they can still direct decisions that affect their lives. Laws and legal frameworks must contain effective safeguards in relationship to interventions for people who may require decision-making supports, including how to prevent abuse and undue influence. We've all worked with individuals or know individuals in our personal lives that are just really highly influenced by other people. And it can be difficult to figure out what they really want in their lives. I have this situation with a family member. He will answer yes to the last person who asked them the question. And that may be different than what somebody asked him a few moments ago. So it's really important that we, in supporting him to make decisions about his life, give him time to think about the decision, to lay out visually for him all the options, and allow him then to communicate what his choices are to us. So we're going to go on to the next slide and talk about some specific life course tools that can be used in this process. Supported decision-making starts with the focused person communicating in some way what they want in their life and what they want that to look like. Now, when I say communicating in some way, it might not be verbally, it might not be through ASL, sign language, it might be through behavior, communication, facial expressions, head nods. Everyone communicates in some way or another. And those people who spend the most time with that individual, who love and care for that individual, are people best suited to help us tell us how they're communicating their choices. So a person could provide the support of sitting with them and filling this out on their behalf. Some people would be able to take it and write out or type out, use an electronic version of this form, information to get us started. We'll talk about that a little later when Amy shares her forms. They can be supported to put information on a life course trajectory, however it makes sense. As Tracy pointed out earlier, we need to be person-centered, and each person's information is going to look different. We want to know what a person wants and doesn't want in their life before we put them to a trajectory that supports them to reach a version of a good life. So we want to know two different things: what they want in their life and also what they don't want in their lives, kind of their dreams and their nightmares. Because then we can focus work, we can focus goals on helping them get more of what they want in their life and avoiding those things that are not things they want in their life. So if you see at the top left here, past life experiences, we don't want to focus completely on the past, but it's important to think about things that might have created traumatic situations for an individual that might give us some clues or cues about why they're interacting with the world around them today in a certain way. And then you see moving forward, vision for what they want and vision for what they don't want. All of those all of that information in each of those categories can really help us pinpoint a trajectory that makes sense and that they're telling us either with their voice or with their body or with their distancing from certain people what they want more of or less of in their life. And that can help point us to potential goals in their person-centered plan if there's somebody who's supported by behavioral health in Michigan. Okay, next slide. So now that we looked at the life trajectory, there are two other forms that we'll kind of take a look at here that are both life course forms. The first one on the left is called Tools for Exploring Decision Making. And this can be really helpful once we have that picture from the trajectory of what they want and don't want in their lives. We can look at what kind of decisions would a person entering into that life need to make. And as you can see, it's a 2-page form. We're only showing the first side of the form here. It goes through the different life domains and the types of decisions that a person might need to make. And then that individual and the team of people closest to them can decide, is this something that a person can easily make decisions on their own and make decisions that are safe and make decisions that help them move toward the trajectory that they've chosen? Or do they need some support? Or in some cases, do they need someone, an alternate decision maker? And so we can, in that way, kind of figure out what are the only things necessary to support this individual to achieve their good life, rather than just assuming that they're going to need support in every area. Then that tool can be taken and used when, and this should look familiar to you, this is the star on the right-hand side, the Life Course Integrated Star for Supported Decision Making. And as Tracy pointed out earlier, that information that are gleaned from the trajectory and the tool on the left can then be placed into the star, and it can be help the person kind of fill that out. You can really look at, okay, if a person needed supports to make decisions in a particular area, who are the relationships you see in the purple section? Who are the relationships what are the relationships that they have, and who are those people that could help support them with a decision in that area? We all have people in our lives that we count on in our circles of support, and there are certain people we tend to kind of compartmentalize. For example, you might get information and a lot of support from your mom, but maybe your mom's not the person you want support on when you're making a decision about your dating life. Maybe that's your best friend or a neighbor or somebody you know well, but not your mom. So when we look at those relationships, we can start to think about and help the person kind of choose who they want to be part of decision making in any particular area of their lives. And it might be different depending on what that decision is in the different life domains. Then as you go around the star, you see eligibility specific services. So again, if somebody needs support in a particular area, there might be a service that they're eligible for that can provide that necessary support in that area. As Tracy pointed out, oftentimes it's interesting if you take this tool and you think about it for yourself as a parent or professional, we find it really hard to think about eligibility specific services for ourselves. But oftentimes when those same people are in a circle of support and they're thinking about this star and this section of the star as it pertains to a person with IDD that's supported by behavioral health, say in Michigan, everything, this is the section that we fill out more. And we all have things that we're eligible for. There are services and supports that I'm eligible for because I'm a woman. There are services and supports that I'm almost eligible for in the senior realm. Not quite there, but almost. I'm starting to get, a lot of mail from AARP. So there could be supports and services that I'm eligible for by my affiliation or my eligibility with that group. Then as you move around the star, you see community-based. Now, oftentimes when we're thinking about supported decision making for ourselves, we look at these tools. We often struggle with finances. Now it's tax season. Many people are needing support. We might go to H&R Block, or we might, use another resource, an accounting firm, to help us with our taxes. That's a community-based resource. So again, when we fill these out pertaining our own lives, we often load everything in that community-based and we forget eligibility. And that's kind of the reverse often when people become members of circles of support and think about those two categories as it pertains to somebody with an intellectual or developmental disability. And then moving around the star again to the pink area of technology, Tracy mentioned earlier, and I've seen some wonderful presentations lately on all the assistive technology that's available to really support individuals. For example, my brother needs some support on, keeping in contact with other family members. He's experienced some time recently where he's been in quarantine. So we were able to put some technology in place that he could, just by using his voice, because pushing buttons on a phone we discovered was difficult and frustrating for him, and identifying whether he's dialed the correct number and whether he's going to get the person he wants when he's dialing when I shouldn't say dialing, but pushing a button. That kind of dates me how old I am. I used to have to dial a phone. But that can be very difficult for some people. So we were able to get him a voice activated device where he can video chat with a family member sitting in the comfort of his own room, having privacy, not having to talk to a staff person to ask for use of a phone, that kind of thing. So technology can be huge in helping people access their decision-making supports, and also it can be huge in helping people in that circle feel like the individual's safe in a more interdependent life. There are tools to help people take medications and reminders. I was just looking at a presentation earlier today, and they were talking about a medication device where if medication's not removed by a certain time, a phone call goes out to a designated person in that focus person circle and lets them know that the medication's not been taken by a certain time. There are tools, assistive technology tools that help people remember to turn off the stove or lock their doors or see who's at the door before they open the door. There are all kinds of assistive technology. So that's something that's really important to help people. The first question you should ask when a person needs some support in a decision-making area is, what assistive technology is available to help maximize their self-determination and their autonomy in that decision? And then looking at all these other areas of the STAR. And of course, we always want to start with personal strengths and assets, figuring out what assets and strengths a person has now before we even get to the rest of the STAR, because we often just make assumptions because it's the way it's always been done, particularly here in Michigan, that we just think, oh, they're going to need a guardian, so we're going to have to put that support in place. And we don't really think clearly and individually about each life domain, each decision that needs to be made, and what their strengths and assets are in that, and then apply these other areas of the STAR. Okay, next slide. We're going to show you how this can look in the life of one person. So Amy's going to come on as well, and we're going to talk a little bit about how she's used these tools in her life.
Hi, everybody.
Amy, do you just want to talk a little bit about your trajectory, and then I'm going to ask you some questions. So before you get started, though, I will say that what I usually do when I'm working with a new individual that I'm getting to know, or even someone that I know well, the first thing I'm going to do is supply them with the tool and ask them to fill it out. Now, I would ask them in a different way. Amy, as you can see, is great at typing, and she's able to do that. Some people that I might be supporting to do a trajectory might not be able to type. They might not be able to read. They might not be able to write. And so having a trusted person from their circle sit with them and ask them the questions and write the information down, it's not about the form, it's about the process. So the first thing you want to do is really make sure that you hear what the person wants. So you want to talk a little bit about this, Amy, and then I'm going to kind of show and talk with you, show the audience in a way like how you would take that initial responses that you get and kind of formalize them or ask more questions or glean more information.
Okay, Mary asked me to fill this out, so I did, and I went back in my life, and before my parents passed away, I lived with them, and they helped me make major decisions. As I got older, then they let me do more of the decisions, but when I first lived with them, I made the decision. They helped me make the decisions.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you were first filling out this form, Amy, the first section talks about past life experiences. So you've put some things on here that kind of you know, and what you just described, that you used to live with your parents, and your parents are now deceased. And so how you make decisions and the people in your life changes over time. And that's similar for all of us. It's
Yeah.
no different for a person that has a disability. And when I look at this moving forward section there, the first thing you say is, I make most of my decisions on your own. And then what do you do, Amy, if it's a really big decision in your life?
Then I asked one of my supporters, and they give me their opinion, but I don't always go with it. I go with my heart and go with my decision, because ultimately it's my life.
Yep. So I love what you just said there. Just because we ask for support on decisions in our life doesn't mean we take each person's advice. Sometimes we ask multiple people and we get multiple ideas on the best way to handle something. And so that acknowledgement that it's okay for a person to change their mind. It's okay for a person to listen to your advice, weigh the options, and then say, well, that kind of makes sense for you, but I'm not sure that makes sense in my life. So I'm going to try it this way. And having the autonomy is critical. Amy, how do you feel about that? Just having that authority to make and to know that you make the final decision in your life.
I think a peer mentor would be good with this, because a lot of people with disabilities, they need someone with another disability or someone that is their peer to help them with it, to support them. So I think that the peer mentor would be good.
Yep. And so Amy's points out a nice thing that can really, you know, it can help people with disabilities. It can also help organizations that provide behavioral health in Michigan. So there are a lot of supports coordinators who think, you know, person-centered planning is really important, and we really want to do it, but we just don't have that kind of time. Preparing for a person-centered plan could be something that a peer mentor, if your agency has peer mentors, as many in the, you know, in many counties in the state do provide, they could help the individual. They could be trained to use life course tools, and could then support people in that pre-planning process. And imagine, as a support coordinator, having these forms completely filled out and ready to go would give a wealth of information to a person's circle at that planning meeting as they're starting to develop goals for the next year. So I'm going to go to the right side, Amy, of your trajectory. It says vision for what I want. And you typed where I live and that I still have my jobs. So I know that that's from having conversations with you. Work is real important to you.
Yes.
How would you feel if that was kind of taken away? If people were feeling like, well, you know, she's reached a certain age, people are talking about that with me. I'm going to hit 60 this year. When am I going to retire? That kind of thing. How do you feel when you hear those kind of comments?
I just told one of my supporters the other day that if I don't have my jobs, I'm not me. So, and he kind of says, oh, that's not what you feel. And I'm like, yes, it is.
Yeah. I had the same question asked of my brother, and I will tell you, in my family, we're sort of late retirees. You know, we might hit 63, 64, 67, 68, 70 before we typically retire. And so, you know, people having that kind of information on here can be really helpful when they're helping a person plan for the next year of their life. If everyone's headed in the direction of retirement and what the person really wants is to keep working, then you're going to end up having problems somewhere along the line in that year. And we're not really heading toward that person's trajectory, and that's what's critical here. And then you mentioned too, vision for a good life. And Amy, I've heard you talk about this a lot. You love living in Walled Lake.
Yes, it's my hometown.
And you really have no desire to ever leave Walled Lake.
No. And I told Mark, I told Vicky, I told everybody that if they make me move, I will go to the house, to my representative. I'm serious, and tell them, because that's where all my supports are.
So again, using
Job.
life course tools, you can really help prepare your circle when you come to your PCP meeting, because you've got all this information down there. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. This is the third tool that we looked at earlier, and this is how Amy filled it out originally. I will tell you again, you might have multiple people use these forms. I always have the individual do it first, and there might be multiple people within that focus person circle that would then fill out the form, and then they have the conversation. Oh, I see you checked that you make decisions about this, or that you needed support there. And I'm wondering what you were thinking there. And sometimes a final product then is delivered that has information from all that individual circle of support. So Amy, I'm looking on here. You check that a decision you can make with no extra support is that you decide where you want to work.
Yes.
What do you have to say about that?
Because it's my life, it's my time. I can tell them, as long as it doesn't interfere with anything I have going, that I can still work it, and it's fine.
And I know, Amy, you've been kind enough to co-present with me on a number of presentations over the last year met. And so that can become work as well, or it can become a way to make some extra money. But all of that needs to be connected with your finances and managed with your benefits and making decisions about that. So there's an area there that you do want some support on. So I see that you checked, I need someone to decide for me. And it's talking about, do I keep a budget so I know how much money I have to spend? Tell us about that a little bit.
With my job, I can have a budget. In fact, my fan just for the 5th time I've had it the muffler fell off, and I didn't call anybody. My helper helped me pay for it, and now I'm paying her back. So no one had to know what was going on or nothing. I just did it myself, and that makes me feel good.
So sometimes with everyday purchases, I see you check 2 different columns here, and that could be true for some people. For some everyday purchases, you might need support, but for certain things, you might not need support. So you can check more than one box, and there's no one right way to fill out these forms. It should be individualized. Let's look down here. A lot of things you make choices about stuff on your own. A lot of your medical decisions, that whole column you have listed that you make decisions on your own.
Yes, I have.
Yep.
I'm fully my guardian, so I have my medical. I make my own appointments. I talk to the doctor sometimes my girls go in with me, sometimes they don't go in with me. It's my decision
Mhm.
who goes in, when they go in, and that's it.
And these forms can be used throughout the lifespan of a person. So they can be filled out again. I have certain medical decisions, I make them on my own. But if I were going in for a serious surgery, which I had several years ago, I would start checking that I want some support, because when I'm unconscious for a couple of hours, I want to know who's going to speak on my behalf to medical personnel. So one thing we need to think about with supported decision making is not to freeze people in time. Just because somebody needs support at one point or another in their life doesn't mean they're always going to need it. And just because they don't need support now doesn't mean that it might not be something that they want in the future. So remember, when you're thinking about these, it's not about the form, it's about the process. And they should be living documents and move and change and grow as the person moves and changes and grows in their life.
I think every couple of years we should fill one out, because you don't know how life's gonna change for you.
Right, and thinking about all that Tracy mentioned earlier, these are great for us to use if we've got a big decision to make in our lives. We can use these forms to think about that, to help us process through that. Okay, we're going to go to the last form here, and that's your STAR, Amy. And that's on that slide 23. Next slide, Caitlin. Should have the star on it.
I must not have that one in this slide deck, Mary.
Okay, my apologies. There it is. It's up on the screen now.
Got it? Oh, okay, good.
Okay, so the star, you've seen that earlier. We talked about that. Just to give you an idea of some things that a person might put in there. Again, Amy filled this out. Do you want to talk a little bit about that one first, Amy, and then I'll add some comments?
My friends, my supporters, I love them. Without Mom and Dad and everybody around me, you become my support. Vicky has been my support. Everybody, they said, what did you just say to me before we got started? Blake and you'll be Amy's support. I mean,
Yeah. I sometimes joke with Amy about she has a huge circle of support made up of, you know, professionals that work in different fields, people from the community, the fire chief in Walled Lake, which I know is a piece of why living in Walled Lake is so important to you, because you're so entrenched in your community there. And so when we were preparing this is one of the things that you said. You filled out the star on your own. Then you got input from the members of your circle of support. They talk to you often about your strengths and your assets that they see in you as well. So I noticed, because I always joke with Amy, don't blink or you'll miss it and you'll become part of her circle of support. So she's honored me by asking me to be involved in that as well. So I noticed what she put. This is called a split star, where you put where the person is in any of those star areas, like strengths and assets, where they are now and where maybe they hope to be or want to be, or with some training or education could be in the future. So what she put, as you see on the star, people say I'm kind, outgoing, and always willing to help. I hope people think I'm a good group home trainer as well as a good peer mentor. It's really hard sometimes when you're thinking about strengths and assets because you feel like you're kind of maybe bragging a little bit.
that's my problem. I can't brag
Yeah.
about myself.
that can be difficult when people are doing this form to kind of say those things. So it's nice then to have the person fill it out, or, you know, have somebody, they can dictate the information for somebody else to put on there if they want. But then also to get input from that trusted circle that you have. So for example, you know, when Amy first showed this to me, I was like, Amy, is that all you have there? I started listing like 10 or 11 things right away. Like, you're a good presenter, you're good at this, you're good at that, you're good at this. And she was like, oh, am I? So it can be kind of hard. But then also having the conversation with the person about where do they, you know, what are skills that they want to pick up in the future? It could be maybe classes they want to take, or information, or books they want to glean information from. All of that can be put on how to build strengths and assets. Amy started co-presenting, as we mentioned. So learning how to co-present, learning how to be in a Zoom meeting, that might be part of future strengths and assets that she wants to pick up. Learning how to speak into a microphone, or how to take questions from the audience. So again, those could be things that might be listed as she goes on to decide whether she wants to continue to do training, skills that she can build and assets that she will have to give to that. And I see from that's a great example, because I see here under technology, I hope to do more supported decision-making training, that there are more choices than just guardianship, because I know that that's important to you, that you're an autonomous adult and that you don't have a guardian. So again, that filling that section out could help point your circle into talking to you about different goals and ways you could, again, make that happen. Or there might be assistive technology that can help make doing presentations easier for you. So you can see how connecting all areas of the star really point the person in the trajectory that they want to head. Next slide, please. So people, I think you went backwards there. Slide 24.
Yeah, our slide number is probably different.
Oh, you're right. So this is the slide after the star. If this is not the one you're looking for, I can advance even further.
It was up a moment ago. There we go, right there.
This one, okay.
So the steps to take in supported decision making. People think it's a lot harder than it is. Amy, do you want to go through these?
Yes. You have to start a conversation with your supporters, or people you like to have support. Maybe they're not your supporters yet, but you'd like to have. Identify who and what you want to assist you. That's up to you. Plan and communicate what you want. Set up an agreement. Maybe it's not formal, maybe it's formal, and then let everybody know what you want again.
So really, it's just 4 easy steps. Start the conversation, identify who or what will assist, and that again could be assistive technology, or it could be a person.
Yes.
Plan and communicate, and then it could be set up as a formal or informal. We have just a couple more minutes and a couple more slides here. So next slide, please. The wrap up.
Okay.
So as you can see from the slide, Amy, do you want to talk a little bit about a little more about how peer mentors can help with supported decision making?
Yes, because peer mentors are your friends, they're your counterparts, and if they can help the person understand what they want, it's easier for the person to understand from another person's view. If it's if they're disabled or if they have a physical disability, then it's easier for them to understand. But the peer mentor has to realize that it's their life, and even if they suggest something that you don't want, that you want for them, and they say no, it's still their life.
Absolutely. So being a strong advocate and being involved in your own life, communicate what you want and don't want.
Yeah.
That's critical in all of this process. Plan using tools that work for you. Be person-centered. Not every tool makes sense for every person. So find one that works for you. These are examples from life course tools. Explore the supports that you need to continue to be in charge of your life. Tie back into the all. Don't always look at, eligibility specific services that will support something. Look at the community-based stuff as well. Start young and continue teaching that process of decision making throughout life. And don't freeze people in time. Supported decision making and these tools can be used even if somebody currently has a guardian to help determine whether there's pieces of that guardianship that could be removed at some point. Maybe we go from a full guardianship to a partial guardianship. Maybe we go from having a guardian to having a representative payee to help just with finances. Don't freeze people in time. People grow and change throughout their life. How peer mentors could be involved is they could help in this process. Peer mentors could, and we have several peer mentors around the state that are life course ambassadors. So we want to go on to the next slide, which is some resources. Tracy, you want to come in and talk about that?
Sure. So we wanted to share the Life Course website with you. There are tons of great resources on the site. There's portfolios and there's planning tools. They are all free and can be downloaded and printed. And so you'll see it is lifecoursetools.com. If you want a more in-depth presentation on Life Course, we have several ambassadors here in Michigan, and we can arrange to set up a time to come and speak to your group or your community. So please let us know if you're interested in that. And we can go ahead and go on to the next slide. And this is here is our contact information. So if you want additional information on the Life Course, supported decision making, or more examples on how to use the tools, please get a hold of us, email, phone. And I know we're out of time, but we do want to open it up for any questions that you guys may have.